Every 35 seconds today, a company becomes a victim of a cyber attack. Very often this is a malware, but roughly every 40 seconds, we already see today ransomware attack. These ransomware attacks in 2021 are single extortions or double extortions, and in some cases, as we have seen already, triple extortions. I'm Peter Hacker, passionate about cybersecurity, passionate about digitalization, the founder of Distinction.Global, a company which is focusing on financial institutions, technology companies, and insurance companies to help identify, quantify, and control cyber risk, privacy risks, or the way I would call it, establish digital trust together with the corporation. The last 18 months had only one constant, and that particular constant was changed. What does it mean from a cybersecurity point of view? It's not just about network security. It's not just about privacy. For any company like yourselves, this means digital trust. Trust in your people, trust in your data, trust into your processes, trust into your systems. And this has to go hand in hand with the way you execute your strategy. Any stakeholder, any shareholder at the end of the day wants to be convinced that you not only control and process data, but you understand the data, you protect the data, there's integrity in this particular data, and ultimately, strategy and digital trust go hand in hand. This will show the future, and the future is online. The future is a digital trust. The value of a company will be very much driven by such trust, which will be reflected in the intellectual property you have at the end of the day. Cybersecurity is a fundamental board topic. Any CEO should be directly involved in cybersecurity. Or in other words, what I call digital trust. It's not just about privacy, it's not just about data, it's not just about network security. Ultimately, it's about the trust in your people, it's the trust in your systems, it's the trust into the processes, or wherever you outsource data at the end of the day. Your stakeholders must be of the opinion, they must be convinced that you as a CEO are leading specifically not just the aspects of data management, but ultimately the transformation in the new digital age. Simultaneously, by all means, you have the CISO. The past role of the CISO, in my experience working with them very often, was very much driven by IT security. This is gone, ladies and gentlemen. We are not talking here about particularly driving IT security. We're talking here about enterprise risk management. And enterprise risk management means for a company that any kind of CISO will have to be directly involved in the business decisions, involved in the business meetings, and ultimately in the stress testing of the readiness from an enterprise risk management point of view. In summary, the conclusions are very clear. Strategy and digital trust do go hand in hand. You can't get the one without the other. It's not a question of if you sustain a cyber attack in the future. It's very often a matter of when. In my view, you could even go one step further, which would be going along the path of, think about somebody's already in your system. From a CISO, from a CEO point of view, you should always work and assume the worst case, which means you have to stress test your readiness ultimately. Think about the aspects of ESG, which I'm passionate about. about data resilience, particularly data trust. Think about you, for instance, a bank, insurance company, pharmaceutical company. One of your biggest assets are data, or is data, which you control. If you control data, you have an asset, but potentially it could be also a liability in the future if it's not perfectly protected. So the focus must very much be on be able to identify an attack, detect the attack, control an attack, and respond quickly on this particular attack, which requires boards to work very close with the CISO. Demystifying cyber digital trust at board level means very close relationship between all the stakeholders. It's a board matter, and it will be a board matter going forward. Cyber is not an IT security matter anymore. So what brings the future after such an unprecedented 18 months? Well, even more interconnectivity, even more dependence, and what I would see already right now are new types of cyber attacks. These particular attacks become even more sophisticated. They might be state-sponsored at the end. We're talking here about so-called non-kinetic warfare. Extortions which have started on extortion towards single companies, individuals, and have become what I call double extortion, potentially to disclose data, are now becoming triple extortion, which means somebody putting a malware on somebody's system, a data manager, and ultimately is attacking the clients behind, the supply chain hacks. These are some of the most sophisticated attacks which are currently happening. Cyber risks, or as we talked before, not just network security, not just privacy, but ultimately the digital trust, is at risk from private companies, but also state-sponsored actors. This requires a new way of thinking. The new way of thinking, as well for me, is the use of AI in the form of allowing, ultimately, real-time response, which has a lot of advantages. But one of the challenges will be to make sure AI is used in an ethical format and not in a non-ethical format. So overall, cyber, privacy, or ultimately digital trust is not just a challenge, it's potentially a big upside for CEOs if they do it right, if CISOs do it right, as a distinctive factor compared to their peers, and will have an impact without any doubt, not just on their own performance, but ultimately on the stock price of a company in the long term.